Well, obviously the result was very good in the first game. How did the secondary look as a group?
I thought we did some things well at times. Obviously, we still have some things that we need to improve on and get better. I thought the guys did a good job of competing, and doing all that stuff. So, for the first game, we had some good things, we had some bad things, and we definitely got to get some stuff corrected before the game this week.
What were you happiest with, and what was maybe the biggest thing you took away that you guys felt like you needed to get better at?
I thought we did a great job communicating. It was really loud, and Washington gave us a bunch of different looks. So those guys were able to communicate, and for the most part, everybody was on the same page. So I thought we did a good job with that, and then I thought we played hard. I thought we played hard. Guys swarmed to the ball as a defense, and so we were able to, even though we didn't do some things exactly how we want to do it, we were still able to make some plays with guys getting to the ball.
What was the biggest thing you harped on about this week to get better at?
Just get better at your game. All the way around. Obviously we got to tackle better. We missed a lot of tackles in that first game, and that's something that we want to work on. We can't miss that many tackles on defense and be successful. So that was one of the things that we worked on, but really just for those kids to go out and improve. Be better than you were last week. That's the goal.
You got young Tyler Horton out there for a few snaps, at least with special teams. How did he do out there? How did he handle the whole situation?
He did fine. He's a kid, like we said, he studies and he wants to be great. So he did fine. He was able to go out there and play on special teams and did a good job with it. And, it'll continue to expand as we go forward.
Do you try to mix him in on defense a little bit and force that issue, or you just kind of let him get some, ease his way into that side of things? Or
no, we have a plan for him, and every game dictates certain things. Obviously, this game, we weren't on defense total number of plays as many. So I think in the first half, we were only out there maybe like 20 or something plays. And so, it's a game-by-game basis, and the game will dictate what happens.
Obviously, everything. When people look at BYU, the first thing everybody talks about with their offense is those tall wide receivers. You guys have faced them before, but what kind of challenge do those guys present for you?
They're tall. There's no question about it. Those guys look like they should be playing the NBA. So, they're 6'7", 6'5", 6'6", 6'5", and so it presents a problem. Obviously, tall guys have a bigger catch radius. They can go up and do some things, and so we just got to be really good in our technique and go attack the ball.
What's the best thing at a guy like Dante or even Moxie, when you're giving up 6, 7, 8 inches? What's the best thing you can do to combat that?
Really, just trust your technique and attack the ball. Because those guys are going to do it, and they do a really great job of giving those guys opportunities. They catch it away from their body, and so you really have to. When the ball's up in there, you have to go attack it for sure, because if you don't, they'll come down with it.
Everybody thinks about the jump ball. Hurst was saying, one of the things they do really well is just a regular pass. They'll use their long arms to go get the ball and kind of beat you that way.
There's no doubt. They do a good job. They don't wait for the ball to come to them. They go snatch the ball. And so, like I said, we have to be really good in our technique. We have to be really aggressive on the ball, because if not, they'll go snatch that thing and pluck it right out of the air. They've shown on tape they made it, year after year. And so we just have to be ready when Saturday gets here.
You guys obviously played well against them last year. What did you see that you guys did do well to combat that last year?
I thought we competed well. Obviously I think they missed some plays too that they normally make. And so, it was just one of those things that, I thought guys went out and they competed and they attacked the ball. And so, the one thing about these guys is they're going to give them opportunities to make plays. They're proven. And so, we just have to be ready for the challenge when it gets here.
I'm trying to think, when Taysom was in high school, you were probably here doing some recruiting stuff. Did you go watch him play at all? Do you remember seeing him in high school at all?
Tanner?
Sorry, Tanner, not Taysom.
Yeah, no, Tanner was here. I had him and his family on campus, was able to see him play in our camps a lot. He's a sharp quarterback. He can really spin it. And so I know he'll be excited to play against the Broncos and obviously get his first start.
So did Moxie and Dion play every snap then on defense?
Yes, they played every snap.
I guess obviously how they do with that extended playing time, and it's going to be probably important for them to have the ability to do that moving forward, I'd assume.
Yeah, they play well. They were prepared for it. And like I said, those kids, they were kind of getting in the zone and gelling. And so the one thing you want to do as a coach is continue to let them go out there and play, and which they did. So, like I said, it's not that they're going to play every snap every single game. That game just kind of dictated that, and we'll take it a week at a time.
I said, do you think with the way BYU runs their offense, that depth might be tested a little bit more potentially this week?
Yeah, there's no question. If you look at them and their wide receivers and the things they try to do, they're definitely going to put the ball up in there. So, we'll have to spell guys and get guys a break so that we're able to stay fresh as the game goes on.
With a guy like Tyler, is it nice to kind of allow him to get his feet wet just with some special team stuff before you put him out there on an island by himself in a college game?
Yeah, I mean, for him, it was his first game, and his family was here for it. I know he was excited. And the one thing about him is he's going to continue to come out here and work, and he knows that we're going to be very demanding of him. And so, he's doing that. He's a student in the classroom, and when we get out on the field, he competes, and he just has to continue to develop and do the things that we're asking him to do.
Dylan had a pretty good game, obviously, the other day. When you have safeties that can come downhill and fill holes and tackle well, I mean, what does that do for your guys' defense?
Those guys are really eliminators back there. So, a kid like Dylan Sumner-Gardner, he's a very physical player. And so he comes downhill and, guys fit up on blocks just right, and he does, and he comes and makes the tackle. So, we just have to continue to do our job back there as a unit, and the guys have to continue to communicate. Obviously BYU poses a different threat than Washington does. So we have to be ready for that, and, we have a few days to prepare.
They're doing a profile on Dylan this week, and I know Marcel's talked about kind of the way he's grown up a little bit over the last year. How have you seen him grow and change since he got on campus?
He's always wanted to be a great player. There's no question. Since the day he arrived on campus, he's been a hard worker. He's been a great teammate too, and so those are the things that you really like about him. I thought he took a huge step in the spring just in terms of knowing the defense, able to communicate, and he's doing a better job recognizing things and processing the information. So, the one thing about football, as you continue to see these guys, it's a year-by-year process, and he made a huge jump just in terms of being able to get the call, process the information, and see what he needs to see. So, he obviously had a very strong first game in terms of coming downhill, being that physical presence that we need back there, and we hope that he continues to do that throughout the season.
Marcel said, Dylan said that he got humbled last year, and how did you see him kind of handle that coming in, all that hype and all that expectation, and obviously he had expectations of himself, and to not be able to maybe make the impact he thought he could make.
That's really the thing with these kids. Now it's getting blown so out of proportion, the hype and the stars and all these things, but guys don't really go watch him play football, and so he did a great job of handling. He never had his head down. He was there supporting the teammates. He's a kid that he understands. He trusts the coaches, and so, that was the thing for him. He continued to work and develop, and we told him when he got here that's what he needed to do. And he just continued to do that, and, you guys were able to see some of the things that he can do last week, and hopefully you continue to see some things he can do.
His personality, he said, probably won't catch him not smiling. What is he like to be around?
He's fun to be around. I mean, he's a kid who loves to compete. He has a smile on his face. No matter the situation, he just loves to play the game, and so, he's a breath of fresh air in terms of a coach for a kid that you can get on. He's still going to smile, It's not in a disrespectful way in any way. That's just him. So every day that he gets to go out and play football is like his birthday. So he really enjoys it. So, it's good to be around.
Does he bring expectations to that defense, though? I mean, it seems like, I don't know, those guys gel pretty well together back there, and it seems like he does kind of have high expectations.
I think everybody has that. That's the one thing about that DB room is, those guys are very competitive, and they hold each other up to a standard every single day. Guys in the past kind of set that standard, and, those kids, they hold each other accountable to that. And so that's the one thing we never want to get away from is, every guy back there, whether you're the first guy or the fifth guy or the sixth guy, when you come in there, there's an expectation of how you're supposed to play. And so they do a good job of holding each other accountable to it. And, the one thing I think about our group is they understand what we're trying to get accomplished. Now they just have to go out there and do it.
Do you remember when that whole thing went down? I mean, he said that when Yates left Texas A&M, he called Coach Yates and was like, just to let you know I'm coming to Boise State with you. Do you kind of remember how all that went down from your perspective as well?
Well, I knew he had called Coach Yates, and then what actually happened was I got here and actually went and did the in-home visit. So I went and I flew to Dallas and was able to meet with him and his family. It was the first time I had ever seen him. And obviously he had already told Coach Yates he was coming. And so I was able to go visit with his family. That was on a Thursday. And then I flew back to Boise on Friday. He flew up for his official visit on Friday. We sent him back home on Sunday, and he was back up here on like Monday. So it was a fast turnaround. But, the one thing about that kid is he knew what he wanted, and he knew the kind of the expectation and the way he would get coached, and he was excited about that.
It seems like he's obviously a mature kid because, he made that decision pretty quick because he said that, he'd already graduated from high school and he wasn't in school. So, he needed to come here essentially.
Yeah, I think the thing for him really was his relationship, obviously with Coach Yates. That's kind of what, started the whole process. There's no question about that. And then, when I went able to go visit with him and his family, I just told him about the culture here at Boise State and how it would be coached. And, him and Coach Yates had a long prior relationship. So, I think for him it was getting a chance to, kind of fill me out, see what we were about as far as Boise State. He knew what he was getting from Coach Yates, and I think he wanted to figure out the Boise State part. And, when he came up here for his visit, he had a great time. The guys talked to him. He was able to bond with those guys, and, he never wavered. And so he went home and came right back up here and started school.
Well, last one for me is just, I've heard a number of you guys talk about just the level of communication, and everybody was on the same page on the defensive side of the ball. How encouraging is it to see that in the first game?
It's good because obviously you have to deal with crowd noise. It's your first game of the season, and so you have to really go out there and, be locked in and be able to make the adjustments, make the calls. So from a staff standpoint, we were pleased with where we're at for the first game. We're not there by any means. It's still things that we need to pick up faster and sooner and see other things that they're trying to do to us. So, it's definitely a good start to the season, and we got to do a lot better job as we continue to go forward.